The sun rose slowly over the East African coast, spreading golden light across the city like a blessing from the ancestors. The ocean breathed softly, its waves whispering stories that had been carried for hundreds of years. Fishermen pushed their wooden boats into water, while the scent of cloves and cardamom drifted through the air. It was a place where old coral stone houses stood beside tall glass towers, where the past and present lived side by side, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in silent war. The narrow streets were alive with people. Women wearing bright kangas called out prices for fresh mangoes. Men hammered iron in small workshops, sparks flying like tiny stars. Children ran between the stalls, laughing and chasing chickens. Everywhere, life moved with the rhythm of drums, footsteps, and hope. But beneath this colorful chaos lived a deeper story, a story of those who had plenty and those who had nothing. The wealthy lived high above the streets, in tall apartments that touched the clouds. The poor stayed where the ocean winds hit hardest, in crowded corners where every day was a fight for survival. Yet even here, people shared what little they had, because the heart of African tales is this: no one walks alone unless they choose to. In the midst of this bustling city was Musa Kamisi, a man who had climbed from the dust to touch the sky. People whispered his name with respect and fear. Musa has the hands of a lion, the elders said. He built his fortune with strength, but his heart grew cold along the way. His wealth shone brightly, but inside his home was a storm that money could not calm. His only son, Jabali, once full of laughter, now sat quietly in a wheelchair, staring at the world with distant eyes. After the accident that paralyzed him, the life inside him dimmed like a fading flame. Musa brought doctors from everywhere, but the boy remained silent, refusing to fight, refusing even to hope. Far below Musa's world, on the crowded streets, lived Amina, a girl with nothing to her name except courage. At 14, she had already seen more hardship than many adults. Yet there was kindness in her eyes, the kind that made strangers trust her. She swept the marketplace and exchanged her leftover food and shared whatever she found with younger street children. The vendor said, "Amina's heart is richer than the pockets of kings." Near the edge of the market sat Mama Zoya, the old storyteller whose voice was as soft as evening rain. Every day, she gathered children around her and told tales of justice, fate, and the spirits who guide human hearts. People said she could see the truth hidden behind any person's smile. She often looked at Musa's tall mansion on the hill and whispered, "The wind of change is coming." On this particular morning, Musa walked to the marketplace with his guards, his face tight with worry. Jabali's therapy had shown no sign of progress. The doctor said the boy needed more than medicine. He needed someone who could reach his heart. But Musa did not know where such a person could be found. As he passed through the busy lanes, the voices of the market faded in his ears. He felt trapped between the world he came from and the world he now lived in. The clash of tradition and modernity echoed inside him, louder than the drums in the distance. He paused, taking in the sight of the old stone houses beside the glass buildings towering above them. "This city is divided," Musa murmured, "just like my own life." A gentle breeze swept through the street, lifting stray pieces of cloth and carrying the smell of roasted maize. Somewhere nearby, Mama Zoya watched him from her wooden stool, her old eyes following him with quiet understanding. "The spirits speak through the wind," she whispered to the children around her. "And today they say a story is about to begin, a story that will test pride, reveal truth, and heal what was once broken." The children leaned closer, wide-eyed. "But Mama," one asked, "whose story is it?" Mama Zoya smiled, her wrinkles deepening like river paths. "A story that belongs to many hearts. And soon, the first thread will be woven." And with those words, the city continued its dance, unaware that destiny was already walking among them, guiding each step, preparing the moment when paths would cross and lives would change forever. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the streets until they shimmered like golden cloths spread across the land. The marketplace was already alive, beating like the heart of the entire city. Every corner pulsed with color, sound, and movement, like a giant drum calling people together. Women wrapped in bright kangas shouted prices over piles of oranges, cassava, and fresh fish still dripping with ocean water. Their voices rose and felt like songs passed down from grandmothers who once traded in the same spots. The smell of roasted maize mixed with the sharp scent of spices, cloves, cinnamon, turmeric, swirling through the air like invisible threads weaving stories into the wind. Young boys darted between stalls, laughing loudly as they carried baskets for shopkeepers. A group of fishermen walked past with nets slung over their shoulders, their feet dusty from the morning shore, their eyes tired but proud. A man beat on a metal sheet with a hammer, shaping it into a cooking pot. Each strike rang out like a call from the ancestors. Everyone moved with purpose, yet there was a kind of harmony in the chaos. An elder at a fruit stall laughed deeply, his gray beard shaking as he told customers, "A market without noise is like a drum without rhythm. Here, life is loud because life is strong." But hidden in the busy movement were stories of struggle, stories the world did not always see. A little girl tugged on her mother's wrapper, asking for a single mango. A young vendor wiped sweat from her forehead as she tried to sell enough tomatoes to buy her siblings a meal. The wealthy passed through quickly, their faces tense, their drivers' horns cutting through the air like blades. This was the place where the city showed its true self. It was not the shining buildings that told the story of its people. It was the market. Here, laughter mixed with hardship, and everyone learned the same lesson. The community survives only when its people survive together. In the middle of the market, Amina moved quietly between the stalls. Her clothes were worn, her hair tied back with a piece of old cloth, but her eyes were bright, eyes that held both innocence and wisdom. She greeted vendors with a small smile. "Mama Leet, do you need help sweeping today?" she asked a woman selling coconuts. The woman looked at her softly. "Amina, child, you are here early. Hunger woke you again." Amina shrugged shyly. "Maybe, but I can sweep before people trip on the shelves." The vendor nodded and handed her a broom without another word. In the marketplace, kindness was often given without question. Amina swept carefully, pushing coconut shells aside while the vendors set up their goods. Children paused to wave at her. She waved back with a smile that could soften even the hardest morning. As she worked, an elderly voice rose behind her. Mama Zoya sat on her wooden stool near the baobab tree, her shawl draped around her like a cape of stories. "Hi, Soko Lina Rojo," she murmured to anyone who would listen. "This market has a soul. If you listen closely, you will hear it breathing." A group of children gathered at her feet. One boy asked, "Mama, what does the market say today?" Mama Zoya's eyes sparkled like moonlight on water. "Today, the market says someone's life will change. Today, the winds of fate are walking through these stalls." The children gasped softly. Amina, sweeping nearby, paused to listen. Mama Zoya continued, "When fate walks, you must open your eyes. Because fate does not shout, it whispers." A gust of wind stirred the dust on the ground. Some women crossed themselves. Others simply nodded, knowing well that in African tales, nothing happened without a reason. Far away, the sound of a luxury car's engine cut through the market noise. People stepped aside respectfully as Moose's guards tried to clear the path. But the marketplace could not be tamed. It swallowed the car noise in seconds. Moose stepped out, his dark suit sharp against the bright colors around him. His face was stern, but fatigue weighed on him like a shadow. As he walked through the market, he looked around, really looked. For the first time in a long while, he noticed the faces, the struggles, the smiles born from nothing. A sense of unease pulled at his heart. "This place," he whispered to himself, "it never changes. But I have." Above the murmurs of the crowd, Mama Zoya watched him with eyes that saw more than the present. "The lion returns to the den," she murmured under her breath. "But he has forgotten how to listen to the other animals." Amina noticed Musa walking by. She lowered her eyes and stepped aside, not wanting to attract attention. She felt the weight of strangers' judgments often enough to recognize the rich when they walked near. The market rumbled on. The calls, the laughter, the grinding wheels, the pounding feet. Life continued with a strength that refused to bow to hardship. But somewhere within that crowded, noisy world, threads of destiny were beginning to tie themselves together. Threads that would pull Musa, Jabali, and Amina to a moment none of them could foresee. Musa Kamisi's story began long before the world knew his name, long before he wore suits that cost more than what entire families earned in a month, long before guards followed him like shadows, long before people lowered their eyes when he passed. He was born in a small fishing village, far from the shining markets and tall towers. His father was a fisherman whose hands were always cracked from pulling nets. His mother sold roasted cassava by the roadside. Musa grew up barefoot, running along the shore with salt dry on his skin. He knew hunger, he knew shame, he knew the weight of poverty like a stone on his back. The elders of the village often told him, "Child, do not let poverty shape your heart. Let it shape your strength." Musa nodded, but the bitterness inside him grew stronger each year. He worked harder than any boy around him. At dawn, he helped his father push the boat into the ocean. At noon, he carried buckets of fish to the market. At night, he studied under a kerosene lamp that coughed more smoke than light. While other boys slept, Musa whispered to the sea, "One day, I will rise above all this. I will never be poor again." Years passed, and fate opened a door. Musa earned a scholarship to the city. He left the village carrying only a small bag and a heart full of fire. The day he left, Mama Zoya, young then but already wise, stood in front of him. She placed a cowrie shell in his palm. "This shell is a reminder," she said gently. "When you rise, remember the ones who held you before you could walk. Richness of heart is worth more than richness of pocket." Musa bowed politely. But inside, he thought, kindness does not fill the stomach. In the city, everything changed. Musa studied hard. He worked small jobs, cleaned offices, delivered newspapers at dawn. He rose so fast that people began whispering his name in meetings, in offices, in banks. He built companies, invested in land, and stepped into rooms where only the wealthy were allowed to sit. Each success hardened him a little more. People admired him, but they also feared him. Musa's eyes no longer carried the softness of the boy from the shore. They carried storms, quiet but dangerous. One day, a business partner said, "Musa, you are respected, but you are like an iron door, strong but cold." Musa only replied, "There is no place for softness in this world." As the years went on, Musa built an empire. Glass towers rose from the ground under his name. Workers bowed when he entered. Newspapers called him the Lion of the Coast. But those close to him knew the truth. Success had taken something from him. He forgot the smell of the ocean. He forgot the taste of his mother's cassava. He forgot the cowrie shell Mama Zoya had given him, lost somewhere in his rise to power. Yet life has a strange way of returning old lessons. Just when Musa believed he had everything, tragedy struck like lightning from a clear sky. His son, Jabali, was injured in a terrible accident. The boy who used to run, laugh, and jump now sat quietly in a wheelchair, staring at the floor like the world had turned its back on him. No amount of wealth could fix what was broken inside the child. Musa tried everything, specialist machines, healers. Nothing worked. Each day he sat at Jabali's side, but the boy's eyes remained distant. The silence between father and son grew heavy, like a wall neither could cross. Sometimes Musa whispered, "My son, please speak to me." But Jabali never answered. In those moments, Musa felt a crack inside the iron shell he had built around himself. He felt fear, not of losing money, not of losing power, but of losing the only person who tied him to his humanity. Late at night, he would walk through the halls of his mansion, feeling the weight of his loneliness. His wife had died years earlier. Now his son was drifting away. Musa, who once believed he needed no one, now felt abandoned by the world. One evening, sitting by Jabali's bed, he whispered, "I gave you everything money could buy. Why does nothing work?" But the truth, which he refused to face, was simple. Money could build towers, but it could not mend a broken heart. Money could buy comfort, but it could not buy connection. Money could gather crowds, but it could not bring love. The elders had warned him long ago. A man who loses his heart loses his home. And Musa was starting to feel just how empty his home had become. Yet even in the coldest moments, destiny does not sleep. It waits. And soon, the winds of fate would carry Musa back into the world he left behind, back to the marketplace, back to the people back to the lessons he had forgotten. There, in the chaos of everyday life, a thread of hope was waiting for him. A thread that looked like a homeless girl with gentle eyes. A thread that would pull him back into the warmth of humanity he had long abandoned. The sun hung low over the East African coast, casting gold across the coral stone buildings and the narrow alleys that twisted like old stories. The market was alive, sellers shouting prices, children weaving between stalls, and the smell of clothes, grilled fish, and warm chai filling the air. Yet among all the noise, there were two worlds standing side by side. The world of the wealthy, shining with glass towers, and the world of forgotten, surviving in shadows. Musa Kamisi stepped out of his black luxury car, his presence as sharp as a cutlass. His suit looked untouched by dust, unlike the ground where thousands walked barefoot. People whispered his name with respect and fear. To them he was a man carved from iron, powerful, untouchable, and unbending. Once he had been poor like them, but the journey to wealth had closed many doors inside his heart. Behind him, a nurse pushed Jabali in his wheelchair. The boy sat still, staring at nothing, his eyes dim like a lamp running out of oil. His legs, once fast as a monsoon wind, lay lifeless. He barely spoke since the accident. Therapists tried. Elders prayed. Nothing reached him. Musa's jaw tightened as he watched his son avoid every sound, every hand, every attempt to help. His heart carried a heavy stone, guilt, anger, and fear all tangled like seaweed. "Let us move quickly," Musa said sharply. "His therapist is waiting." But fate does not listen to the plans of men. As they passed a crowded market path, Jabali's wheelchair wheel sank into a broken patch of ground. The nurse struggled, but the wheel refused to budge. People walked around them, too busy to notice, except one, a girl, thin and barefoot, carrying a torn cloth bag of leftover fruit, stepped forward. Her face was tired but bright with kindness. This was Amina, the girl the market loved though she had nothing. She placed her bag on the ground and gently touched the wheelchair. "Po, little brother," she said softly. "Let me help." Jabali slowly lifted his eyes. It was the first time all week he looked at someone directly. Amina smiled at him, small, warm, honest. "You are stuck, but don't worry. Even the strongest lions get trapped in vines." Jabali blinked. Something inside him cracked open. The nurse stepped back, surprised. "It's fine, girl. We can handle." But Amina was already kneeling. With quick hands, she cleared stones from the wheel's path. Then she looked at Jabali again. "I know you don't like people touching your chair. So you tell me, should I push gently or hard like a stubborn goat?" A small sound left Jabali's lips. Not quite a laugh, but close. So close that the nurse gasped. Amina nodded, as if this reaction was normal. Gently, then. She pushed once, twice, and the chair rose out of the broken ground. Jabali stared at her, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." Those two words were like rain in the desert. A man standing behind a spice stall watched carefully. Mama Zoya, the old storyteller, also watched from a corner, her eyes glowing with knowing wisdom. She whispered to the air, "When souls are wounded, fate sends unexpected hands. Let the proud take note." But someone else watched, Musa. He had stepped aside to answer a call, and when he returned, he froze at the sight of his son speaking to a stranger. His heart pounded in his chest, confused and shaken. Why could the street girl reach his son when doctors and therapists had failed? A strange fear crept into him. The fear that money could not buy everything. The fear that his world of control had a crack he couldn't fix. He stepped forward, voice low but tense. "Who are you?" Amina turned, her face still calm. "My name is Amina, sir." "You touched my son." "I helped him," she replied simply. Jabali looked up quickly, the spark in his eyes fading. "Baba," she was only. Musa raised a hand, and the boy fell silent. But Musa's eyes were not filled with anger alone. They were filled with something else. Something he had not felt in years. Confusion, and a fear of losing what little connection remained with his son. A gust of warm wind swept through the market, carrying with it Mama Zoya's soft humming. She lifted her carved walking stick and murmured, "Ah, the river has met the stone. Now the journey begins." Musa stared at Amina again, as if trying to understand how a girl with no home, no shoes, and no future could reach the heart of the boy he loved more than his wealth. Jabali's small voice broke the silence. "Baba, please don't be angry." Musa swallowed, his throat tight. For a moment, the cold billionaire was gone, and a wounded father stood in his place. "I am not angry," he said quietly. "Just surprised." Amina nodded. "Surprise is good, sir. It means a heart is waking up." Musa flinched. No one spoke to him like that, not even his board members. The market hummed around them, but the moment felt still, like destiny had paused to watch. Jabali looked at Amina with a softness Musa had not seen since before the accident. Something in the boy's posture changed, just a little, but enough. His shoulders seemed lighter. His eyes did not hide behind pain. Musa noticed, and for the first time in months, he felt hope. But hidden beneath that hope, like a snake coiled under dry leaves, was fear. Fear that this girl would reveal truths he was not ready to face. Behind them, Mama Zoya whispered to the wind again. Every story begins with a meeting, and every meeting carries the weight of what is yet to come. As the sun dipped lower, Musa stared at Amina with a troubled mind. His son had opened a crack in his heart, and this girl had stepped through it without even trying. The market slowly calmed after the moment between Amina and Jabali, but the air still carried a strange energy, like the sky before rainfall. People returned to their stalls, yet their eyes kept drifting toward the girl who had moved a billionaire's son with nothing but her voice. Amina picked up her torn cloth bag and pressed the fruit inside to make sure it had not been crushed. She always handled food with care, even leftovers, as if each piece carried the blessing of survival. Her life had taught her to respect every small gift. Hunger was a teacher that rarely spared anyone. She turned to leave, but Mama Zoya's raspy voice called out, "Child of the streets, come." Amina stopped and slowly approached the old woman. Mama Zoya sat upon her faded mat, surrounded by carvings, old beads, and gourds painted with symbols from forgotten stories. Her eyes were cloudy but sharp in spirit, like they could see more than the world in front of them. "You touched the boy's heart," Mama Zoya murmured, tapping her stick lightly. "Not many can reach a soul hiding behind pain." Amina lowered her eyes. "I only helped him because he looked scared and alone." "Ah," Mama Zoya said with a knowing smile. "Only the humble think their kindness is small." She leaned closer. "Do not forget, child, even a spark can wake a sleeping fire." Amina didn't fully understand, but she nodded. Respect was something she carried like a cloak. It kept her warm even when the nights were cold. A group of market women nearby whispered to each other, "That is the girl who helps old Faraji carry water every morning." "Yes, and she saved Salim's baby from the cart last month." "She has no family, no home, yet she gives more than those who have plenty." Amina heard their whispers, though she pretended not to. Praise made her uncomfortable. She did what she did because it felt right. Kindness, to her, was the only thing she owned. She moved to a corner and sat under an old baobab root pushing out from beneath the cracked ground. This tree was her shelter when rain washed the market clean and when cold winds pushed through the alleys. She tucked her legs under her and began sorting the fruit she collected, one for later, one for sharing, one for trading. Her hands were fast, practiced from years of survival. As she worked, a small boy approached her carrying a broken wooden toy. "Amina, can you fix it?" he asked shyly. She smiled. "Let me try." Her fingers moved with quiet patience. She tied a piece of string, tightened a loose wooden leg, and handed it back. "There, walk it slowly and it won't fall." The boy beamed. "Thank you." Amina waved, but when the child left, her smile faded. She stared at her own hands, then scratched, tired. "These hands can fix toys," she whispered to herself, "but not my life." The pain of being alone pressed against her chest, but she had learned to swallow it before it turned into tears. Tears were a luxury she could not afford. She took a deep breath, letting the breeze carry the scent of ocean salt to her. Even pain smelled different in a coastal city, like it carried hope from across the sea. Not far away, Musa watched her quietly. He stood behind the shade of a spice stall, his expensive clothes out of place among simple woven baskets and wooden crates. His eyes followed the girl's every movement. The way she treated children with care, the way she sat with calm dignity despite having nothing, the way people respected her though she lived on the streets. It confused him. How could someone so poor carry so much goodness? How could she reach his son so easily? How could she smile when life had given her so little? Questions pushed into his mind like waves crashing against rocks. The nurse approached Musa. "Sir, we should go. Jabali is waiting." But Musa did not move. "That girl," he murmured. "Who is she?" "A street orphan," the nurse replied softly. "She has been here for years. Everyone knows her. She helps where she can." Musa's jaw clenched, his voice low. Why does the world give kindness to those with nothing and bitterness to those who climb to the top? The nurse didn't answer. Some questions were not meant for ordinary people. As they walked back toward the car, Musa watched the sun from the corner of his eye. Jabali sat in silence, but his face had changed. His eyes followed Amina wherever she moved. A soft longing rested in them. Longing for connection, for comfort, for something Musa feared he could no longer give. When the car door opened, Jabali hesitated. "Baba," he whispered. She talked to me like I was normal." Musa felt a knife twist inside him. "You are normal," he said sharply, but the boy lowered his gaze. "People look at me like I'm broken." Musa opened his mouth to deny it, but words disappeared, because he too feared the same thing. He feared Jabali had lost more than the use of his legs. He feared his son had lost his will. A soft voice drifted across the market, calling out the star of the evening storytelling. Mama Zoya's voice rose into the warm air. "Listen, people of the coast. Even a child with no home can carry the sun. Even a heart buried in sorrow can bloom again. The spirits watch us, and they do not measure worth by wealth." Amina looked up at the old woman's chanting. Musa did too. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the market. The billionaire and the homeless girl, standing on opposite sides of life, yet both carrying wounds they try to hide. The wind blew gently between them, as if the spirits themselves whispered, "This is only the beginning." The sun softened as it dipped toward the ocean, painting the coastal city with gold and copper light. Shadows stretched across the coral stone streets, mixing with the glow of modern glass towers. The market was alive, voices rising like waves, spices thick in the air, drums beating in the distance. It was a place where old stories whispered through every stone, even as a new world pushed its way forward. At the far end of the marketplace, near the steps of an ancient baobab, an old woman slowly lowered herself onto a woven mat. People nearby nodded to her with quiet respect. Children gathered even before she spoke. Mothers paused their work. Even the busy traders softened their voices when she appeared. This was Mama Zoya. Her silver hair curled like coiling smoke, and her eyes held the calm of someone who had lived long enough to see kingdoms rise and fall. In her presence, it felt as if time itself slowed down to listen. A boy called out, "Mama, tell us a story." "No rush, mtoto wangu," she said softly. "A story waits for the right moment, like rain waits for a thirsty earth." She placed her carved staff beside her, tapping it lightly. The sound echoed, though her touch was gentle, as if spirits answered her call. Just then, Musa Kamisi walked through the market with Jabali. His expensive shoes stepped carefully around puddles left by fish sellers. He was a man carved by ambition, his back straight, his eyes sharp, his jaw always tight. People greeted him with forced smiles. Some feared him, others envied him, and a few respected him. But none approached him unless he spoke first. Jabali sat quietly in his wheelchair. His eyes were empty, the way the ocean becomes when the tides pull back too far. He kept his hands tightly folded, as if afraid the world might touch him again. As they passed, Mama Zoya's gaze lifted toward the boy. Her cloudy eyes brightened, as though she recognized something hidden deep within him. She whispered, the winds carry sorrow today." Jabali looked away, uncomfortable. Musa frowned. "We don't have time for distractions," he muttered, mostly to himself. But Mama Zoya heard, and her smile deepened. "Oh, patient," almost amused. The market's noise swirled around them, but one sound rose above it all. The sudden scrape of Jabali's wheelchair as it caught on a loose stone. He jerked forward slightly. Before Musa could step in, a thin girl rushed from between the stalls. "I'll help," Amina said, planting her feet firmly and lifting the front wheels with surprising strength. Her small hands were rough, but steady. Her clothes were worn, patched again and again, yet she held herself with quiet dignity. The marketplace knew her, Amina, the orphan who slept under the kiosks, shared food with dogs, and helped the elderly carry loads heavier than she was. Musa watched silently, unsure what to say or do. Amina crouched beside Jabali. "Po, little brother, that stone almost sent you flying." Jabali blinked. It had been months since someone joked with him like that, months since someone looked at him without pity or fear. His lips trembled before he managed to whisper, "Thank you." Amina smiled warmly. "Worry not. Wills get stuck. Hearts too, but both can be moved." Jabali stared at her, the first spark of life in his eyes since the accident. Musa felt something shift inside him, a tightness he had long ignored. But he stayed back, blending with the crowd, watching. Mama Zoya lifted her staff again. The tapping echoed like a heartbeat. "A strange wind blows," she murmured. "Strangers meet, yet their paths were written long before their births." A group of children sat around her, waiting for her words. She began speaking, not loudly, but her voice carried with the natural power of someone whose stories shaped the market itself. "Listen well, Watoto. In our land, fate does not shout, it whispers. It moves through the poor and the rich, through the weak and the strong, through pain and through healing. And when the right souls meet, even broken spirits can rise again." Her gaze slid to Amina and Jabali, then briefly to Musa, who stiffened as if caught. "Every child," she continued, "carries a light. Some lights shine bright from birth. Others hide behind clouds. And some need another soul to guide them back." Amina stood, brushing dust from her knees. She looked at Jabali with gentle concern. "Are you okay now?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, because you helped." Musa's breath hitched. It had been so long since he heard softness in his son's voice that it felt like hearing a forgotten melody. Mama Zoya smiled knowingly, her voice turning almost prophetic. "The tides are changing. Mark my words. When kindness meets wounded pride, destiny wakes." The market hushed around her words. Amina picked up her bag. "I should go before the fruit sellers chase me out," she joked lightly. But Jabali reached for her wrist, not forcefully, just enough to stop her. Will you talk to me again?" he asked quietly, hope trembling in his voice. Amina paused, surprised. "If I see you, yes. Why not?" Musa felt something heavy settle in his chest. Shame? Fear? Jealousy of the connection he could not give his own son? He could not name it, but it was there, undeniable. As Amina walked away, Mama Zoya's chanting rose behind her. Some stories begin with kings. Some begin with beggars. But the greatest ones begin when the lost find each other. Her words floated to the market like warm smoke, weaving themselves into the air between Musa, Jabali, and Amina. And the spirits listened, knowing the tale had only just begun. The sun hung low over the East African coast, casting golden light across the bustling marketplace. The smell of roasting cassava danced with the sharp scent of seawater. Traders shouted over each other. Women balanced baskets on their heads, and children weaved through the crowd like tiny gusts of wind. Old coral stone buildings stood like tired elders beside tall glass towers that sparkled proudly, as if reminding everyone that the world was changing too fast. Musa Kamisi stepped out his black SUV, his face carved in stone. People lowered their eyes as he passed. They called him the man who turned the ocean into gold. But none dared to greet him warmly. Wealth had given him power, but it had stolen something too. Kindness. ever since the accident that left his son paralyzed. Musa walked as if carrying a mountain on his shoulders. Behind him, Job Ali sat in his sleek wheelchair, staring at nothing. His hands rested coldly on his lap, and his small face showed no emotion. He had stopped speaking much after the accident. Therapy had failed. His spirit felt locked behind a door no one could open. As Musa spoke with Supplier, Job Ali's chair rolled slightly down a slope and stuck between two uneven stones near the spice stalls. The boy didn't call for help. He simply looked at the ground, empty and tired. From the corner of the market, Amina noticed him. The girl wore a faded kanga cloth around her shoulders, and her feet were dusty from walking all day. She had nothing. Yet everyone in the market knew her as the girl who helped others before helping herself. She approached slowly, unsure if the boy wanted company. "Hey, your wheel is stuck," she said gently. Job Ali did not look up. Amina knelt beside the chair and tried lifting it, but the stone held it tight. She dusted her hands and leaned closer. "You know, wheels are stubborn," she said with a shy smile. "Like goats. They only move when you speak to them nicely." Job Ali blinked. A small spark of curiosity flickered in his eyes. Amina continued softly. "Can you hold aside for me? Just a little? I think together we can pull it out." It was the first time anyone had asked Job Ali to help in months. Slowly, almost afraid, he placed a small hand on the side of the chair. Amina pulled. He steadied. Together the wheel popped free. Amina grinned. "See? Even stubborn wheels listen when we work together." For a moment, the marketplace noise faded. Job Ali's lips trembled, then curved into the smallest smile, fragile but real. Amina's voice softened. "You're strong. Stronger than you think." Job Ali swallowed hard. "No, I'm not." "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "If you were not strong, you would not still be here." Musa had been watching from behind a stall, hidden by hanging spice sacks. He had seen children talk to Job Ali before. Doctors, teachers, therapists, but never had Job Ali responded, and never had he smiled. Musa felt a sting in his chest, something like hope mixed with disbelief. He stepped forward quietly, careful not to startle them. Before he reached them, Mama Zoya, the old storyteller, shuffled from her mat under the shade of an ancient baobab carving. Her voice floated through the air like an old song. "Ah, even the smallest seed breaks through the hardest soil when touched by the right rain." Amina turned respectfully toward her. Job Ali listened, still holding the side of his wheelchair as if grounding himself. Mama Zoya's wrinkled eyes held wisdom deeper than the sea. "Child," she said, looking at Amina, "you have the gift of softening hearts. Never lose it." Amina lowered her gaze shyly. "I only saw someone who needed help." "And that," Mama Zoya replied, raising a finger, "is where all healing begins." Musa's jaw tightened. His voice emerged rough with emotion. You spoke to him," he said to Amina, almost unable to believe it. Amina stepped back nervously. "I didn't mean any trouble, sir." "Trouble?" Musa whispered. No trouble." He stared at his son, who still had a faint smile lingering like a fragile memory. His heart, cold and heavy for so long, cracked just a little. Job Ali looked at Amina, and for the first time in months, he spoke more than a single word. "Will you come again?" he asked softly. Amina's face lit up with a warm, innocent glow. "If you want me to." Job Ali nodded, a tiny but powerful sign of something awakening inside him. A sudden breeze swept through the market, carrying the smell of cloves and the distant call of the ocean. Mama Zoya closed her eyes, as if feeling the shift in fate. "Ah," she murmured, "the spirits have begun turning their wheel." Musa watched the scene quietly, emotion swirling inside him. Hope, confusion, fear of losing this new spark, and the heavy guilt of years spent holding his heart too tightly. But he said nothing. Not yet. Fate had stretched its hand, touching the lives of three souls who were about to change each other forever. The afternoon sun leaned low over the coastal city, throwing long shadows across the marketplace. The air shimmered with heat, and the smell of roasted cassava mixed with the salty breeze from the ocean. Voices rose and fell like waves. Vendors calling, children laughing, traders arguing. Yet beneath this lively noise lay a silent divide. The wealthy in their polished cars, and the poor moving like ghosts between the stalls. Job Ali sat in his wheelchair at the edge of the market, his small hands resting weakly on the wheels. His face carried the weight of a boy who had lived more pain in months than others face in years. His eyes avoided the world, as if looking at it hurt more than the accident ever did. Amina stood beside him after freeing the stuck wheel. Her clothes were torn, but her spirit shone brighter than the noon sun. She watched Job Ali with the careful eyes of someone used to reading sadness, someone who understood hunger, not only the stomach, but the heart. "You're safe now," she said softly. "The wheel won't trap you again." Job Ali stared at her, unsure. He wasn't used to kindness from strangers or anyone at all after the accident. Amina gave a small laugh. "You look at me like I've stolen your treasure." Job Ali blinked, surprised. I don't have any treasure." "Ah," she said, tapping her chin thoughtfully. "Then that means I wasn't a thief. Good." Job Ali's lips twitched, just a little, but enough for Amina to notice. She grinned like she had spotted a rare sunrise. "You really smiled," she whispered, eyes wide with wonder. A real smile, like a tiny secret. Job Ali touched his mouth with trembling fingers, as if checking if it was true. For months, not even the best therapist could break through the wall he had built around himself. But now one playful homeless girl had cracked it like a shell. From the shadows of a fruit stall, Musa saw everything. His heart struck against his ribs. He leaned forward, barely breathing. Job Ali smiled. My son smiled. It felt impossible, like hearing a tree speak or seeing the ocean rise to greet the sky. Amina didn't notice Musa watching. She focused only on Job Ali. "You know," she said, sitting on a wooden crate beside him, "the world is full of people pretending to be lions. But true strength is quiet, like the sea before a storm." Job Ali's eyes lifted to hers for the first time. "I'm not strong," he murmured. Amina shook her head. "Do you know what Mama Zoya always says? The weak water can break the strongest stone." She leaned closer. "Maybe you are that water." Job Ali swallowed hard. No one had spoken to him like this, not like a broken thing, not like a responsibility, but like a real person. He whispered, "Do you help everyone like this?" Amina looked away for a moment. "I help when I can. My stomach might be empty, but my heart can still give." She paused, then added with a shy smile, "And you looked like you needed more heart than bread." Job Ali laughed, a soft, thin sound, like the first cry of a newborn goat, a sound Musa had not heard in months. At that moment, Mama Zoya approached, her walking stick tapping on the stones in a slow, wise rhythm. Her old kanga fluttered behind her, like a story long forgotten, but still alive. She stopped beside them and studied the two children with eyes deeper than the sea. "Ah," she said, her voice warm and rough like roasted maize. "A wounded boy and a hungry girl. Two spirits meeting on the road of fate." She nodded approvingly. "The ancestors must be awake today." Amina bowed her head out of respect. "Mama Zoya, I didn't do anything big. Just help him a little." Mama Zoya chuckled. "Child, sometimes a little seed grows into the biggest tree." Job Ali looked at Amina again. Will you talk to me again tomorrow?" Amina's breath caught. No one ever asked for her company. Most people avoided street children like dust on their shoes. She nodded gently. "If you want me to, I will." Musa finally stepped forward, unable to stay hidden any longer. His footsteps were heavy, as though he carried both pride and fear inside him. Amina froze. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to bother your son." Musa stared at her, the coldness in his face slowly melting. "You didn't bother him." His voice trembled with sincerity he rarely showed. "You helped him." Amina lowered her eyes, unsure how to respond. Musa glanced at Job Ali. "I haven't seen him smile in a long time." Job Ali looked down quickly, embarrassed, but Amina placed a gentle hand over his. "Smiles are shy creatures," she said quietly, "but they return when they feel safe." Mama Zoya raised her staff and pointed it lightly toward Musa. Even the richest man cannot buy the medicine of the heart, she said. Sometimes healing comes from those with empty pockets. Musa felt a sting in his chest, not of insult, but truth, a truth he had ignored for too long. He looked at Amina again. "Thank you," he said, each word heavy with meaning. Amina shook her head. "No need to thank me. If he needs a friend, I can be that." Job Ali's fingers tightened slightly around hers, a tiny gesture filled with hope. The market continued to bustle around them, but for that moment, time stood still. Three souls bound together by a kindness too pure to be planned, too powerful to be ignored. Mama Zoya smiled to herself. "The river has changed its course today," she murmured, "and no one can stop a river once it begins to flow." Above them, a lone seagull cried as it soared across the red-gold sky, as if carrying the moment toward the next chapter of their intertwined destinies. The marketplace roared with life, voices rising and falling like drums in an ancient ceremony. Fishermen argued over prices. Spices released warm clouds of smell, and carved wooden masks stared from their stalls like spirits watching from the shadows. The old coral stone buildings stood proudly beside tall glass towers, as if the past and the present were locked in an endless dance. Yet within this lively chaos, a man of great wealth moved silently. Musa Kamisi stepped through the crowd, wearing a tailored suit that did little to hide the weariness on his face. His shoes glimmered, but his eyes were dull, like coals losing their fire. He had come only to check on the therapist, waiting for Job Ali, but what he saw instead made his breath catch. Just ahead, Job Ali's wheelchair sat stuck between two stones. The boy's small body leaned forward helplessly, and beside him stood Amina, thin, dusty, but glowing with a kindness that shone brighter than any jewel Musa had ever owned. Musa froze behind a stack of mango crates. He pulled himself backward, as if afraid his presence would shatter whatever fragile moment was forming. He hid like a thief, though he owned half the buildings in sight. "What is happening?" he whispered to himself. "Who is this girl?" Amina crouched near Job Ali, pushing the wheel free with steady hands. Musa watched her every movement. There was no fear in her, no hesitation, only a soft patience that Musa had long forgotten in himself. Job Ali said something too soft for Musa to hear, but then the impossible happened. Job Ali smiled, a small, trembling smile like the first light before dawn. Musa's heart struck against his ribs, so hard he almost stumbled. "No, it cannot be," he murmured. "He has not smiled in months. Not once." Amina laughed with him, a bright sound that carried over the crowd like the ringing of a bell. Musa clutched the crates for support. He felt his legs weaken, something he had not felt since the days he sold fish barefoot on the docks. Two women beside him whispered, "That girl, Amina, she helps everyone," said one, balancing a basket on her hip, "even when she is hungry." "She has a good soul," the other replied, "better than many who eat well." Musa swallowed hard. Their words stung, because they pointed at a truth he avoided. Power and money had hardened him into stone, but a girl made of dust had melted his son's silence. Amina leaned closer to Job Ali. "You are stronger than you think," she told him, her voice gentle like warm wind. "Your heart is just hiding." Job Ali's eyes softened. "You don't know me. I know pain," she answered simply. "And I know when someone is fighting it alone." Musa pressed a hand to his chest. He remembered the accident. Job Ali's screams, the flashing lights, the doctor's words that fell like heavy stones. Since then, nothing reached the boy. Therapy, toys, expensive treatments, even Musa's own voice. Nothing. Yet here was a girl with no home, no food, no family, breaking through walls Musa could not even touch. Musa's eyes burned, not with anger, but with something deeper, something he had not felt in years. Helplessness. His lips trembled as he watched Amina place her hand over Job Ali's. "Why her?" he whispered. "Why not me?" Mama Zoya appeared quietly beside the crates, as if she had stepped out of the air itself. She looked at Musa with eyes that had watched many lifetimes. "You hide like a frightened boy," she said softly, not judging, only stating a truth. Musa stiffened. I am not hiding." "Oh." Mama Zoya smiled faintly. "Then why do you watch your own son from the shadows?" Musa didn't answer. His throat closed. Mama Zoya tapped her staff on the stone. "Sometimes the river refuses to flow for those who try to force it," she said, "but it will open itself to the one who approaches with humility." Musa looked at her sharply. "Are you saying my son listens to her because I am the river blocker?" "I am saying," she replied, "that the heart chooses its healer. And today, your son's heart has chosen." Musa turned back toward Jabali and Amina. Jabali was speaking, actually speaking, and Amina nodded as if she were listening to the most important story in the world. A deep ache spread through Musa's chest. It felt like both a wound and a blessing. For the first time in months, he whispered his son's name with hope instead of despair. "Jabali." The wind carried his whisper away. No one heard it except Mama Zoya. She placed a hand on Musa's arm. Her touch was old and rough, yet warm. "Do not fear this moment," she said. "It is not stealing your place. It is opening a new door." Musa's voice cracked. "What am I supposed to do?" "Watch," she said. "Learn. And when the time comes, step forward as a father, not as a man of money." Musa closed his eyes, breathing slowly, fighting the storm inside him. When he opened them again, he saw Amina telling Jabali a small joke and Jabali laughing, a sound Musa had thought he would never hear again. The market noise faded. The smells, the shouts, the colors, all of it blurred as Musa watched only one thing: his son returning to life. And he knew, with the weight of an ancient truth, that fate had shifted. The story had begun to write itself in a direction he never expected.